Good morning. I'm Dave Eisenreich, a special agent with the FBI, and this is Grace Pagan, an intelligence analyst with the FBI that specializes in ransomware. To start with, I'd like to thank Jeanette from the Cyber Threat Alliance for having us and for giving us the opportunity to talk about some issues that I think are important to all of us. So we're going to be talking about ransomware, the threat landscape, some of the things we're seeing, and then some things to expect when working with the FBI in a cyber context, but in a broader context, most of these things will be true for working with the FBI as well.
Okay, so let's start with a basic overview of ransomware as we know it now. Ransomware is essentially a malware that encrypts a user's files and computers, making them inaccessible until ransom is paid. The victim's computer is infected with malware. The victim's data is encrypted, making them unreadable. Network backups could be encrypted or deleted. Then the actor demands payment to decrypt files or network, likely in the form of cryptocurrency, which is generally Bitcoin, but we've also seen Monero. Concerning the current state of ransomware, it is really not a lucrative business anymore for cyber criminals to steal personally identifiable information. What we see are the same actors that were executing ransomware back when ransomware first started. Now, they're essentially businessmen going to receive, who want to receive more money executing ransomware than just stealing credit cards. The modern day ransomware as we know it began in 2000s, and in 2013 we were introduced to CryptoLocker, a new breed of ransomware that used Bitcoin transaction, also had a more advanced forms of encryption. Ransoms were set to about $300 to $700 back then. Since 2015, we've actually seen a steady increase in the amount of ransomware extortion amounts. In 2020, the Internet Criminal Complaint Center, or IC3, received more than 2,400 complaints with adjusted losses of $29.1 million. This represents a more than threefold increase from 2019, when the IC3 received about the same number of complaints with adjusted losses of $8.9 million. Ransomware actors and their affiliates were emboldened in 2020, demanding significantly higher ransom payments from their victims. For example, the average Soda Nikibi ransom demand increased from $200,000 in 2019 to more than $1.6 million in 2020.
Let's talk about that a little bit, Grace, because while those numbers are accurate from IC3, most companies don't actually report. So can you give us a sense of the overall figures, the overall losses we're looking at?
Yeah, you're correct. A large percentage of ransomware incidents are actually not reported to law enforcement. So we anticipate that the actual losses are significantly higher. Private industry reported about $350 million in 2020 in losses. So you can kind of see the disconnect. Now, regarding how victimization occurs, the current vectors we still see for ransomware intrusions include phishing, RDPs, and compromise of MSPs are still the most often ones that we see. This really hasn't changed. Even though phishing is considered low key, it's still highly effective. The leading cause of ransomware is generally outdated or unpatched systems and lack of training on the dangers of ransomware. So when it comes to the evolution of ransomware, we have ransomware groups that were closed, who worked within themselves and had a defined set of actors. Actors have progressed to more of a market offering known as ransomware as a service, which include two different types. One where criminal affiliates conduct the attacks and the proceeds are shared with the ransomware developers, kind of like leasing the ransomware. Or we have cyber criminals who just outright buy the ransomware. We've seen in the past 3 years different variants such as DarkSide, which has been popular in the news lately, Egregor, Soda Nikibi, and Abaddon as ransomware as a services. Criminals don't really need a vast technological wisdom to conduct these attacks. You know, they just need to know where to find these pre-built tools, and then they can employ these, have easy to employ intrusions, malwares, ransomwares. In addition, affiliates quickly switch to new variants with retirements, or there's been a lot of takedowns, people saying they're going offline. So they can just easily switch from one variant to another, or employ multiple variants at one time in separate attacks simultaneously with ransomware as a service. In regards to another question that a lot of people want to know is in regards to targeting, actors are pretty ruthless. In the beginning, they didn't really disrupt national critical infrastructure like they're doing now. Generally, ransomware and other cyber actors do not specifically target one industry over another. Instead, at the end of the day, they're just looking for a payout. Basically, it's what will bring the greatest profit for the least amount of work. So it's basically big game hunting, finding companies with the ability to pay and who need their services restored quickly. So due to law enforcement visibility and attention on ransomware, we've also seen ransomware variants describe a lot of different lists or different types of targets that are off limits. These include hospitals, police departments, power plants, the oil and gas industry, government sector, nonprofit, just for the fact that they don't want to attract unwanted attention towards them. However, we have to remember that at the end of the day, cyber criminals are just looking for places with the ability to pay the biggest amount and who need to restore their system operations immediately. So, but as I said earlier, continuing with trends, that ransom demands have increased significantly from the past. With what we're seeing now are double digits, millions of dollars being asked as a ransom to decrypt a system, compared to 300 or 700 or tens of thousands over a year. So, but what we also have been seeing as a trend is double extortion. So basically, this is where the cyber criminal exfiltrates the victim's data and then encrypts their system, and they threaten to publish the data to put further pressure into paying the ransom. This has become the norm rather than the actual exception. If the victim does not pay the ransom, the actors then leak the stolen data on a dedicated leak site or on the dark web. Ransomware operators use the now defunct Maze variant, were actually the first ones to deploy this ransomware double extortion technique in 2019. Today, we've seen at least 16 different types of variants employ this tactic, including major variants like Maze's successor, which was egregor, Soden or Revel, which we've seen on the news a lot, and a doppelganger.
Grace, as disturbing a trend as this is with the double extortion, are we seeing any additional trends that we want to highlight?
So that's a great question. Actually, we have seen triple extortion techniques now. So essentially, this is where the ransomware actor steals the data so that they can threaten to leak that information. They then encrypt the system, and then they threaten to conduct a DDoS attack or extort partner companies or shareholders as a way to further increase the pressure on the victim. I just want to also make note that just because a company has paid a ransom once does not automatically mean that you're not susceptible to another ransomware attack. Cyber criminals have targeted in the past organizations that have displayed a willingness to pass. So it's also a good thing for organizations to be aware of. As the threat from ransomware continues to grow, the FBI has only seen an increase in attacks, but we also have seen, a significant increase in the number of ransomware variants. So these are a list of ransomware variants that we have seen being deployed. Recently, Revel with the JBS Foods and the Kaseya attack, and we see DarkSide with the Colonial Pipeware. These are just a list of a few, but the FBI approximately maintains about 100 open investigations in ransomware variants across our 56,000 field offices.
And Grace, all 100 of those investigations are actually active variants.
Some of them are defunct because, as the trend goes, when there's pressure put onto a ransomware actor, they generally take it down. But what we have been seeing is that ransomware actors are actually, rebranding themselves. So as we see in like Maze, they went from Maze and they went to egregor, or Babook. They've also been taken down after their Metro PD attack, and they went dark for a while, and they've also rebranded. So what we're seeing continues is that they don't want law enforcement pressure on them. So they shut down all their servers and then decide to rebrand as something else so that they can kind of be in the dark, I guess, if we want to say.
So same story, different cover on the book.
Correct, essentially, basically. So regarding the consequences of a successful ransomware attack, this can lead to the inability to provide core services such as, work in hospitals, police departments. It could cost millions of dollars to remediate the losses that one incurs from the aftermath of a ransomware attack, as well as a loss of credibility from that organization's customers if they have fallen victim to an attack. Now, concerning whether or not to pay the ransom, the FBI's guidance to victims is that we recommend not paying the ransom. It is that we recommend this because we believe that payments embolden or enrich bad actors and perpetuate this activity, providing more incentive to launch attacks. There are also circumstances, where decryption tools don't actually work, the actors don't have the technical proficiency to help decrypt, or that the actors just had no intention at all to decrypt after a payment. That being said, we are sensitive to the fact that this is also a business decision. At the end of the day, ransomware could not and would not exist if people just stopped paying the ransom. Another topic that I just want to bring light on is the fact that, when you're dealing with cyber insurance. Ransomware attacks are the most commonly reported cyber insurance claim. So many ask, is cyber insurance companies' incident response programs actually effective? Well, there's yes and no. So some argue that the backstop support of insurance companies, insurance encourages the ransomware attackers, as victims may be more likely to pay if their costs are covered. There's also evidence that attackers may target companies specifically because they have that insurance, and then they can pay. So in an interview actually with a ransomware affiliate for Revel, they basically stated that targeting firms with cyber insurance was like tasting a yummy morsel, or one of the tastiest morsels. So more mature cyber insurance providers are typically requiring that their clients adhere to strong baseline security practices, which can significantly reduce the disruption caused by a ransomware attack. They also connect victims to recovery experts and law enforcement, and they can leverage a variety of market tools, such as co-insurance to incentivize security standards and just to discourage organizations from paying ransoms at all.
So obviously, the decision for an entity to have insurance or not is going to be a business decision, just in that vein. But definitely, what we've seen is that obviously you don't need us to tell you this, but the cost of the policies are going to go up as incidents increase. And then the industry is moving, as Grace said, towards strict protocols. If you want insurance, you're going to have to meet this criteria. A way to think of it is for life insurance, you need, in terms of the medical test, and you need, your premium will depend upon a variety of factors. So obviously, that's an individual business decision, but there have been changes in the industry, and so I think again that could relate to whether a payment, whether a victim company decides to pay or not.
Correct. I agree. So Dave, so what is it actually like to work with the FBI?
That's a great question, and if you're thinking that that the FBI is going to come into your place of business, whether it's a large company, medium company, small company, and force the door open, seize your computers, shut down your business, you couldn't be further from reality. Look, let me start with this, because I think this is so important, and I think sometimes it really gets lost with all the technical information and the details. Is we're a law enforcement agency, and you are a victim of a crime, and that is exactly what we will treat you like, the victim of a crime. I have never met, I worked with a lot of companies through the years, not just in the cyber realm, but in different areas. I have never met a victim company that asked to be the victim of a crime, right? It just doesn't happen. And so we recognize you didn't have a choice in the matter. We recognize no matter how robust your network is, and no matter how much you patch and you stay abreast and you practice good cyber hygiene, things can happen, right? We're always going to treat you as a victim, and that is our pledge. And I really wanted to stress that because I think that's extremely important.
And two, I think that, often companies think that, if we partner with the FBI, they're going to be snooping in our other companies' affairs. So I feel like they don't really feel like they should report because, the FBI, they'll look into our things. Maybe they'll find another investigation to look into. But, as you said, we do stress that you are a victim, and we only are there to try to find those actors and try to help you out. So
that's a great point, Grace. And so let's talk about some of the things we are going to be looking for. As I said, we are a law enforcement agency, right? So what we're looking for is evidence of the crime that's been committed on you. And so I apologize in advance. We've got a slide here that's going to be a little bit technical, and it's more geared towards your CISO, your IT professional that's coming up. And I'm going to talk in depth a little bit, just for a couple minutes, about some of the things we might be interested in. But what we're not going to do, and I can promise you this, is come in, critique your network, and be like, "Well, you shouldn't have set it up like this." That's not what we're here for. We're here to uncover evidence of the crime, to attribute who did this. And one of the benefits of working with the FBI is that during the course of the investigation, we don't do network remediation, right? There are other agencies that do that. They do a really good job, and private companies. But what we will do is, in the course of our investigation, as we're pursuing this evidence, and we find things that will help you, we will absolutely share it with you. It is your network, it's your system. We'll absolutely share it with you, and that I think will help in terms of your remediation effort. Another reason to work with the FBI, and I don't, I'd like you to maybe take a little bit of a longer view here, and that is, and Grace has touched on this during her presentation, is we absolutely have to impose risk and consequences on these actors. Like, one of the trends that we're seeing is, as we've gotten more efficient here in the US in attributing and pinpointing these individuals, and in other developed countries, and we work with these other developed countries' law enforcement, is that we're sort of outsourcing these cyber criminals to safe havens, right? And if certain countries come to mind and you're thinking of those countries, yeah, you're absolutely right? And so the ability to reach out and arrest may not be as prevalent in those countries as it is in the US, because essentially we're making these entities more efficient. We're outsourcing it, taking it away from here. But what that leads to is it underscores the importance that we share intelligence. And here's kind of the long view. So if you report, and maybe we can't help you that particular time, you're already the victim, right? And the ransom's moved too many times, and we can't get it back. But we will take the intelligence that we uncover with your permission. We'll scrub out the victim portion, but the indicators of compromise and other things that are of interest to your CISOs and other folks, and we'll send that out. We'll share that with the community. So maybe another company doesn't fall victim to what you fell victim to, right? And the flip side of that is, maybe you're not the victim this time, but now you're the beneficiary of another company that's worked with us, and we've shared that intelligence so you can harden your network, so you can see where the vulnerabilities are, and move forward from there. So it's another benefit of working with the FBI. And while I will say this, like, it is very difficult for us to reach out and affect arrests in certain countries. We have a long memory in the FBI. Not too long ago, we actually arrested somebody that landed in the wrong airport, right, working with our overseas partners, from a 2012 indictment. And so this community at this point in time is very aware of law enforcement scrutiny. And by imposing risk and consequences, we will make it harder and harder for them to operate. It's the same concept in terms of practicing good cyber hygiene. You just want to raise the bar on your particular network, on your system, so that it's so hard that they go somewhere else, right? So that they don't attack US companies. And that is the eventual goal. And so a couple other things to Grace's point, we're not going to go in and second guess how you set things up and how you did things, right? That's just not what we're there for. And to really drive that home, like, we're law enforcement, we are not regulators, right? That's not what we do. There are regulatory bodies in the government. The FBI is not a regulatory body, right? We're a law enforcement intelligence agency. This is if you take a look at this slide, you'll see this is kind of what when we work with your CISO, and again, I apologize, it's a little bit technical, some of the things that we're really interested in terms of your network and the information that we're going to need from your network to try to pinpoint this, get to the bottom of the criminal activity, and then move forward from there. So I'm not going to go through the whole slide. If this interests you or anything that we show you here, please get with Jeanette, and we'd be happy to share this with your company. But as you can see, the basic topics, we're really looking for the way they got in without getting technical, and the way they're going to remove the data, and to make sure that they can't come back in, right? Which, in your whatever company you work with to remediate, is also going to be interested in these same things. So it's not going to be a duplicative effort. It's not going to be an extra burden on you. One thing I do want to point out, and talk a little bit about this more, is whether it's a large company, a mid-sized company, your first call on these types of cyber incidents is generally your CISO, your IT admin, your professional in that area, right? And your second call, sometimes your first call, honestly, these days, is going to be to your general counsel. If it's a large company, it's going to be your general counsel. If it's a smaller company, it's going to be a law firm that represents you in these matters. And that's just the reality of today, right? I mean, having your business shut down can have additional consequences to the company besides just the loss of revenue and the loss of business, right? There can be externalities going on. And normally we don't talk about victims, but I think an example, because it was in the news, is the Colonial Pipeline, right? There were externalities to shutting that business down. And so obviously, that corporate counsel was involved in those decisions, appropriately so, right? And so it really, really helps for your IT professionals to have a conversation with the legal professionals in your organization well before any incident, right? Like, explaining what it is that they might need to do in these situations, and who they might be working with in these situations, whether it's your remediation company. And if you haven't done so already, that might be something to look at. We can't make recommendations on what specific company to use, but there are many good ones, and there is a website, a government website that lists them out, DHS, and we're happy to provide you that link. But those are conversations that should occur in preparation before any incident, so that when the incident occurs, the response is as robust and as quick as it can be. We in the FBI have formal ways of sharing information. One such example is the Flash, and it's a liaison alert system where we'll send it out and it will highlight a potential threat. If we have IOCs or other relevant information for your IT professional, we'll include that in there, and we'll send that out. That's an example of a formal information sharing. A PIN is another example of private industry notification where we're highlighting a threat, how and what it looks like, perhaps how to recognize it, and perhaps what to do. A very generalized formal information sharing is a public service announcement, sometimes known as a PSA. This is really not geared towards your IT professional or your CISO. This is more of a layperson's information to just kind of highlight a threat and just let somebody know, hey, just on a whole, these are things you may want to be aware of. So those are some formal mechanisms that we have to share information and intelligence. And all of that information that's in there is a result of investigations with private sector partners that reported to us so that we could take that information and share it out back with the private sector.
Exactly. So Dave, now that you've gone over different ways of formal information sharing that we do here at the FBI, what are some other ways of informal sharing?
That's a great question, Grace. And so let me start with this. My premise, having worked with a number of companies, is that it is always better to have a relationship with the FBI before the event, before the crisis. The most difficult time to forge a relationship is in the midst of whatever event it is, whether that's a cyber event or whether it's any type of other type of event that the FBI is involved in. And so I would strongly recommend that you start that process. The FBI has 56 field offices and smaller satellite offices, which are called resident agencies. So the odds are very good that there's one near you. Every FBI field office has a cyber task force, which is responsible for investigating these incidents. They're typically also a strong component of the InfoGuard chapter in the area. And within the field offices, there's actually a special position that was created to work with the private sector. And it's called a PSC, Private Sector Coordinator. And the entire role of the PSC is to work with companies so that when the incident happens, you have somebody that you know, and you're not just dialing a number and talking to a stranger, right? And so again, I would encourage you to if you don't have one already, a relationship with the PSC of the Cyber Task Force, please think about doing that. And again, I can, like I said, there is one in your AOR, and just reach out to Jeanette, and we can get you that contact information. There's also CyWatch, which is our 24 hours a day, 7 days a week operations center. There's, I mentioned the Cyber Task Force. There's also IC3, which is generally for smaller incidents and other things. If for a colonial pipeline thing, I would not put that through IC3. I would reach out to my contact in the field office and work with them. A couple of other examples of informal ways to work closer with the FBI, something called the General Counsel and the CISO Summit. So the FBI we do one every year. The next one's coming up in October in Charlotte. And we bring in CISOs from a number of companies, and we keep them for about 3 or 4 days. Typically, we do this either at the FBI Academy located in Quantico, Virginia, or we have regional models where we do it in a field office, such as the one coming up in Charlotte. And we work with the companies, identify the threat to them, explain how we do our investigations, and kind of let them peek behind the curtain. I think that is bar none, one of the best ways to have a relationship with the FBI. The field office has to sponsor the CISO in question from the company. So the first step to potentially attending the CISO Academy is obviously reaching out to that field office and having a relationship. I talked a couple minutes ago about the importance of general counsel, right? It's just in the modern world, nothing happens or very little happens without the general counsel being involved in it. Just because of the ramifications, the legal ramifications of so many different things. That's a reality. And so we have something called the General Counsel Summit, where we actually will bring the CISO and the general counsel of a company in, and again, let them peek behind the curtain and kind of information share. And it really strengthens the partnership between obviously the CISO, the GC, and also the FBI. And just establishes that trust and really, I think, identifies what it is we're going to do, how we do it. So there's no mystery involved, and just removes as much as possible of the stress from what could potentially be a very stressful situation when the incident occurs. I would recommend either one of those. And again, unfortunately for this year, for 2021, they're full, but we are already in the planning phases for 2022. And so if any of those things interest you, happy to send you the information. You can also get that from your local field office.
So overall, just in general, it's just best to work with us early on during a ransomware incident, so we can impose, risk and consequences on cyber criminal actors. But the main key here is, timely reporting, and the fact of just please report with us. There you go. So, and also a good resource with different tools is stopransomware.gov. It's hosted by CISA. And so that's actually very helpful and has useful tools for, companies that would like to know more about ransomware, how to protect their systems. So if you could please check that out.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, thank you guys for having us. We really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please message them to Jeanette, and we would be more than happy to get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.